Evening. You'll have to forgive me. I'm known for my soft voice. So I am welcome to this year's annual Westview Festival. I am Philip Fitzsimmons, the University Archivist and Special Collections Librarian. Tonight's event is being brought to you by SWOSU's Department of Language and Literature, the Al Harris Library, and the Western Plains Library System. While we are excited to have the fantasy novelist David R. Slayton with us as the keynote speaker, we need to say a few words to celebrate the ongoing publication of Westview. I can only speak as an archivist. Westview has been SWOSU's literary journal since the fall of 1981. It is published semi-annually by SWOSU's Department of Language and Literature. It accepts previously unpublished short fiction, poetry, prose poems, creative nonfiction, and artwork. All 98 issues can be viewed online by doing a search for SWOSU Digital Commons Westview, or you can go to dc.swasu.edu/Westview. Thousands of articles of the journal have been downloaded over 86,000 times in 166 countries since 2016. It's been a successful publication that it continues to be read all over the world. Now I'd like to say a few words about David R. Slayton and his work. He is a native of Guthrie, Oklahoma, who lives in Denver, Colorado. Titles from his urban fantasy Adam Binder series have the titles White Trash Warlock, Trailer Park Trickster, and Deadbeat Druid. Now, what else could you possibly need to draw you in, right? He is also known for his epic fantasy Gods of Night and Day series, and last year's release was Rogue Community College, the first volume of a Liberty House series. Awards that he has received is for the Colorado Book Award from 2024, Science Fiction and Fantasy for his book Dark Moon, Shallow Sea. And he was a finalist for Mythopoeic Fantasy Award for Adult Literature in 2024 for the Adam Binder series from the Mythopoeic Society. So, because I can only speak as an archivist, Dr. Smith was going to come up and say a few words about Westview.
Thank you, Philip. And thank you all for being here. I am so excited to have this wonderful event this evening as part of an ongoing series that we've done as the editors of Westview, and of course in collaboration with all of the wonderful people that Philip named as well. So we're very fortunate to be here with you and to have our wonderful author with us here tonight as well. I'm Professor Amanda Smith from the Department of Language and Literature, and I have had the honor of being one of the editors of Westview over several years. But I do want to give credit where credit is due to Professor Fred Alsberg, who was one of the original editors of the journal. I brought one of the earliest issues, so you can see kind of where we began in 1981. This is, I think, the second issue, and this is where we are today. So we have had a long and rich tradition, again, really, and thanks in large part to the hard work of, and there he is, oh my goodness, I conjured him. I was just talking about you, Fred. Yeah, and really, Fred made the journal a great institution here for the Department of Language and Literature and for SWOSU as well. Fred published it, I think, 4 times a year, so did a lot of work with it. And it started out as just a journal for just Western authors and was sort of a little regional thing, and it's really grown beyond that. So we're really grateful for his hard work in making the journal what it's become. So thank you, Fred. I'm so glad you're here. Yeah, a round of applause, please. And then the last thing that I'll say is that, or actually 2 things. I also owe a debt of gratitude to Philip for helping us go digital. which was a major accomplishment. We used to be only in print. We are still one of the few literary journals that are available in print and online. So we love to keep this work of art in print as well as available to a wider audience too. So thank you, Philip, for helping us to achieve that goal. And then the final thing that I'll say is that it has been my great honor to work with my colleague, Dr. Nolan Meditz, who has recently taken over in the primary role as editor for the journal. I'm still assisting, I'm still helping out, but he is our creative writing professor, and it only makes all the sense in the world that he would now be at the helm of this publication. So he is right now at a conference in New Orleans, or he would be here with you tonight as well. But just let's give a round of applause for Dr. Meditz as well for his hard work. Yeah. So this is an event that we hope to continue, and I'm really glad to see so many students as well as faculty and friends here with us this evening. So thank you for joining us. I'm going to turn it over to Connor Kirk, who's going to tell you a little more about our author.
Thanks, Dr. Smith. It's so great to be here. I'm here on behalf of Western Plains Library System. I'm the Director of Customer Experience. Started as a little part-time employee here at the Weatherford Library when I was actually in your class, and your class, and your class. So it's great to see lots of familiar faces here, and I'm happy to partner with Philip at Al Harris Library and Southwestern Oklahoma State University. I just wanted to share the story of how I discovered David R. Slayton. I was at a conference, the Public Library Association conference in Portland, Oregon, back in 2022. So things were just reopening in Portland. Like, a lot of restaurants still weren't open, but you know what was? Pal's Bookstore. And I was not going to miss that, so I thought I was being sneaky and got away from the conference for an afternoon. I ended up bumping into my director and all of my colleagues there. I was nervous. It was my first national conference, but I was lost in Powell's for hours and hours and hours. If any of you have been there, you know how massive it is. And one title caught my eye as I was upstairs, I think on the 5th floor, and it said White Trash Warlock. And I thought, now that's a title. And I pull it out and I read it and I say, oh, this looks right up my alley. And it's I read that David R. Slayton is from Oklahoma, and I thought, this is a sign. I am supposed to get this book. And so at that time, Deadbeat Druid was not out, so I got the first 2 books, brought them back, loved them, told Philip and Dr. Godosic about it at our Myth the Peak Society chapter. We read the first book. We loved it. We read Dark Moon Shallow Sea, loved it. I have all the books. They're wonderful. I do want to say, if you have not read the books and you want to, your local Western Plains Library System, the Weatherford Public Library branch, has all of the David R. Slayton books, all of them, in print, ebook, and audiobook. So whatever medium you want, we have it. But I just think there's incredible characters, incredible world building, wonderful stories in here. And I think one of the main lessons that I picked up from David's books is a quote from from this book, actually. And just because someone doesn't live like you doesn't mean they're any less valuable. That's probably not verbatim how it is, but that's the lesson that I think we could all use a little bit more of in today's climate. But I just want to go ahead and turn it, am I going back to you, Philip? One more thing from Philip, but thank you all. And like I said, even if you don't live here in Weatherford, if you're a SWOSU student or employed at SWOSU, you can qualify for a Western Plains Library System card. So go get one and read David's books.
Yes, thank you for ordering those for the Western Plains Library System. We also have one copy of each of the books at the Al Harris Library that you can check out. We have a small display just inside the door. You can ask and check them out. It's not a problem. Another thing that I wanted to do was to present a piece of stained glass that I built to David. This, I consider it a piece of fan art. It is inspired by the novel Dark Moon, Shallow Sea, and I'm going to put this down. But I have really enjoyed his books. I've read all of them at least 7 times. And so it just seemed like the right thing to do. I'm going to just leave this here, and at the end of the evening, I'll pack it up and give it to you. So David will give his keynote address, and remember that when it's done, you can do Q&A, interact with him. We just have to be out of here a little before 7.
Sincerely, thank you. That is one of the kindest gifts. My best friend, whose wife died for a long years, and so I know how laborious it is. I know how much work it takes. I'm going to dive over here and grab this. Try to stay out of the static zone. Now I'm all emotional. I'm going to be like, choking up and not able to talk. So thank you all for this. Thank you, Westview, for having me. Philip, thank you so much for arranging all this. You've been such an incredible guide today, giving me all the information where to be and escorting me around campus. And thank you for showing me the archives. That was fascinating. And the library, because who doesn't love a library? I like to start any of these kind of conversations with a good 6-foot range of healthy social distancing, because I'm terrified of breaking that thing. I like to start these things by saying, I'm not supposed to be here. By every statistic and odd, I shouldn't have made it here. I grew up in a trailer in the woods outside of Guthrie. I grew up with way too many guns, bows, arrows, knives than any 6-year-old should ever be allowed to play with. 2 very sporty brothers, one of whom is a professor now himself with a PhD. But by every standard, my story should have probably ended somewhere around there. Poor, broke gay boys who drop out of high school don't get to write books, win literary awards, and speak at festivals. But I got lucky. I made a lot of mistakes, dropping out of high school probably being the biggest in Bethany. My parents made a lot of mistakes, but they got one thing absolutely right. They made sure that we had books. Yeah, it's okay. I'll just hold still, stop walking. I'm a pacer. I'm a pacer of old. And books saved my life. They saved my life because they gave me access to windows into other experiences and lives. They showed me my story didn't have to end in Guthrie in a trailer. They showed me that there was a chance to be out there and to do so much more. I feel this is a really critical thing to talk about right now, because literacy and books, ideas, are under assault across the country. You don't know what your voice means until somebody finds it. And you may feel like you're speaking into the darkness. We'll talk a little bit more about that in White Trash Warlock in a moment. I always knew that I wanted to write, but first I had to survive. I got my GED. I got a scholarship to go to Denver for writing poetry, of all things. I'm a terrible poet. Though I have worked 1 into the sequel for Dark Moon Shallow Sea. You'll have to tell me what you think. And they promptly cut my scholarship after 1 quarter. They did not know what to do with the poor boy from Oklahoma. And they kept saying things like, well, when your parents send your check for $40,000, I'm like, let's pretend my parents are dead. Start there, and maybe we can work this out. This was, by the way, the 90s. 40 grand was a lot of money then. So I had to drop out of DU and get in-state tuition. And I finished my degree in English at Metropolitan State University, where I also got a degree in history, focusing on the ancient, and went on to get a master's in something practical for my day job. So I like to say I'm the world's most overeducated high school dropout. My brother and father got their doctorates, so I feel like an underachiever in comparison. Not many of us have gone to college, but those that do tend to try to make up for all the rest of us. I always knew that I wanted to write, but the first thing I had to do was survive. I had to graduate. I also worked my way through school because I didn't want to take on a lot of debt because, I wanted to major in liberal arts. When I finally got out of that, when I finally survived, I knew that I wanted to write. So I went to my professors and I said, I want to write. I said, okay, we'll sign you up for creative writing and teach you how to be a teacher. I said, I don't want to be a teacher, I want to be a writer. And they said, well, you're not going to make any money as a writer, so we're going to make you a teacher. And I'm like, all right, I'll do lit. So that's how I ended up with a lit degree. Also, you know, full-time writer now, vindication. One of the things that was happening, though, when I finally got to writing is that I was running from my roots. I didn't want to tell people I was from Guthrie. I didn't want to tell people I grew up in a trailer. I didn't want to tell people that I'd often been associated with the term white trash. And I got into that in the book, in White Trash Warlock. I keep nodding at it like it's over there, but it's actually in Connor's hands. And the thing about that was, I had to reconcile that. So I finally wrote a book. I wrote an epic fantasy. It was 180,000 words, and it was awful. It was garbage. But I typed the end. And those of you who want to write, nothing will level you up more than finishing the damn book. This is what I fight with my mentees about all the time. I have a shiny new idea. I'm like, no, finish the book. Then you can write the shiny new idea. The shiny new idea will be there, I promise. Get the book done. So I wrote an epic fantasy. I couldn't get an agent. I couldn't sell it, so I started writing another one. And the lesson that we'll talk about here is persistence. The main thing is persistence. That you must never give up on your writing, and you must never let anyone take it from you. Finally, I got an agent, and he couldn't sell my work. And I thought, well, self-publishing wasn't quite a thing yet. And I knew that I wanted to be traditionally published because I wanted to have as much distribution as possible. I wanted my stories to reach as many people as possible. So after a couple of years, I fired him and I got a new agent. But we still weren't moving my books. It's like a snowstorm, like I'm back in Denver. And so eventually, when she wasn't able to sell the epic fantasies, oh, it's the jacket, I got it now, okay. When she wasn't able to sell it, I started to hate writing. And writing had been my joy. Writing, along with books, was the thing that I loved the most. So I was starting to hate it. So I stopped worrying about what would sell. I said, I'm just going to write something for me. It's going to be super weird. It's going to be super gay. And I stopped running from my roots. I wrote a book about somebody like me, a broke gay witch from Guthrie, Oklahoma, who grew up in a trailer. Now granted, witch and all that, but still, you get the point. And I sent it to my agent on a Sunday night. I was almost done with it. I thought, I'll put this on Wattpad, maybe on my website, and if people like it, maybe I'll get an audience and then we'll be able to sell a book, like I'll get a contract. So Sunday night, I was just about done with I think this might actually be something. Maybe I do want to see if we can sell this. About 9 o'clock on a Sunday, I hit send. I got woken up at 1 a.m. with a text. The time will be important that it was Mountain. So it's 1 a.m. Mountain. I get woke up with, this is fantastic, I love it, this is the one. I'm halfway through it. Because she lived in Mountain Time at the same time as well. Then, after texting me, she called the head of the agency, who lived in Florida on Eastern Time, who sleepily and grumpily picked up the phone and went, did you forget the time difference? It's 3 a.m. here. And she said, no, wake up and read this thing that David sent us. And that's how I got a contract, my first contract. But that persistence never stopped being important because the book of my heart, Dark Moon, Shallow Sea, was still sitting in a folder, breaking my heart. Because epic fantasy is tough. And epic fantasy with a gay main character that's not about being gay, who's going to read that? So after Warlock and its sequels did well and earned out, we said, would you like this book? And my publisher said, you're an urban fantasy writer. I said, no, I'm a fantasy writer. He said, all right, we'll take it, but only if you write another urban fantasy. And that's how we got Rogue Community College, which I do love, by the way. And finally, the book of my heart got published. And then it won the Colorado Book Award. And vindication. Let's see. The big thing was I couldn't get anywhere until I recognized that my voice meant not running from my roots. Since White Trash Warlock was published, I get emails all the time from readers. And the emails that I get just make me light up because they will say things like, I can tell you're not faking it because you get the food right. He eats what I ate, which means we eat a lot of potatoes. We eat giant pots of spaghetti, salmon croquettes. We eat poor food because we were poor. And you'll notice that about Adam really quickly. He'll eat anything because, like, you know, can't be picky when you're poor. And they also say thank you. Thank you for writing about people like us who grew up rural, who grew up poor. Thank you for writing a book about someone who grew up where and when we did. The main point about that is books saved my life. I am not doing anything. I thought we were friends. Books saved my life. You don't know if you're trying to write, you're trying to create art, you don't know whose life you might save. Your voice could be the thing that makes a difference for someone. No matter what rejection you get, no matter what news you hear, no matter what nonsense, never, ever let anyone take your writing from you. Now I can't run away and hide because we're going to do Q&A, but I want to. Okay, let's go. Ask me questions, and if you're stumped, you know, there's always the topic of my cat. So.
So my name is Chloe. I have not fully finished writing a book yet, but I am an aspiring author. Do you have any pieces of advice you could give to someone like me who's finished a draft, kind of working on the second draft, stuck in the middle of college trying to get a nursing degree and find time to write at the same time, and anything like that?
First of all, that's awesome that you're that far along in it. And
It's been 4 years.
And yeah, don't worry. It took me forever. It will always be there. You have to survive first. One of the hardest lessons I had was the Virginia Woolf thing. You need a room of one's own and you need food. You have to survive before you can create. So if you are really stressed out with nursing school, you're really stressed out with things, first piece is it's okay if you need to survive first and you need to put the writing down for a bit. The second thing is something that was taught to me by Rachel Kane, who we unfortunately lost a few years ago to cancer. She was a fantastic woman and a fantastic writer, but if it can help you, this helps me a lot when I had a day job. Make writing your joy. Make it the thing that you escape into. So when you are totally stressed out and you need a break, go edit, go write. If you can make it the thing that brings you joy and happiness, then you'll, even though it is work, it will be work that you want to do. It's kind of like a runner's high. So that's the thing, is make writing your joy. And then make the time that you can carve out for it sacred. Meaning, you know, unless you're bleeding, you don't knock on the store. I had to give up TV. I had to give up hobbies I liked because I carved out that time. I had a pretty intense job in software, but nursing school's a lot though, so give yourself grace. But when you can write, make it the thing that brings you joy and protect that time. Be selfish.
Thank you.
David, I've started reading Rogue Community College,
Thank you.
and I'm about maybe a third of the way through. It's been nominated for the Mythopoeic Society Award, and I'm reading it for that committee and for my enjoyment. But my first impression is, and of course this will be altered by completing the book, but my first impression is that it's all about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusivity, because they come into this community college and all kinds of creatures are there, and having to learn how to cooperate, get along with, appreciate others. And I'm wondering Whether you're getting any blowback over this.
I'm not getting any blowback about it. I am getting a lot of gratitude from people who feel included. I think I mentioned this a moment ago, but the United States is currently at 79% literacy. 54% of the people who are literate in the United States, I checked these stats last night and again this morning, are reading at an 8th grade level or below. We're not reading as a country. And this goes to kind of what Connor said as well. We can build bridges if we understand each other's experience. I hate that DEI or woke have become these dirty words, and they become words to use to attack people. Shouldn't we all be awake? Shouldn't we be conscious? And I'm gay. Like, writing books with these characters, I will occasionally get an email or I'll get a review that says, why do you have to write a fantasy with a gay character? I'm like, because I couldn't find one. I still can't find one, especially written by a gay man. There are a handful. Google it, search. You'll find a few of them. I'll be at the top of the list, Katie Edwards, 2 or 3 other people, and most of them independently published, by the way. And that thing is, I don't live in a gay, white, cis world, abled world, right? I've been to those parties. They are super boring. I wouldn't want to live in a world without my black friends. I wouldn't want to live in a world without my disabled friends, or my friends with chronic illness, or my bi women friends who are married to men. I don't want to live in a world that is that boring. Again, I've been to those parties. It's very dull. I can only talk about Calvin Klein for 10 seconds before I fall asleep. But I haven't gotten any blowback. I don't think my books have been banned, partly because I write adult. I don't write in the young adult category that my books sometimes get crossover readers, which is fine. I write PG-13. My stuff is not sexually explicit. I did have somebody confront me recently saying my books had an agenda, and they confronted me about Warlock. I was shocked how angry I was, because I put so much of myself into Adam, because Adam grew up the way that I did. Adam grew up where I did. All these parts of me are in Adam. And I understand he's a fictional character. We are not the same people. He's a lot nicer than I am, for one. And I was accused of having an agenda with that. And I have never come so much closer to coming out of my chair and having a moment with this gentleman, and just about showed him exactly how Oklahoma I am. So I haven't received much blowback. I'm very grateful for my publisher who gets it. I will say that when we pitched White Trash Warlock to my publisher, to my acquiring editor, he said, "What do you write?" I said, "I write books about gay characters that are not about being gay." And he said, "That's exactly the book my son wants to read. And that's the whole reason that I have a career." He got it. Other editors said, "Where's the trauma? Where's the coming out? Where's the AIDS?" I'm like, I don't want to write that. One of the things I love most about Dark Moon, Shallow Sea is there's no racism. There's no sexism in this world. Nobody cares. One of the most powerful characters in this is a black woman who's a bishop. She's amazing. And she kicks a lot of ass. And no one questions that she's a woman or black, because they don't have the same definition that we do, because their world doesn't have the history that we do. It was amazing to build a world without that stuff. And it was
What
so
makes
cool.
it fantasy, right?
Unfortunately. But I think sometimes it's important in fantasy to give you the escapism, but also to give you the idealism, a world that we could have. Not always. We should confront things, and we should talk about them. We were talking before, she and I, about the problem of people who have historical accuracy in fantasy. Well, I must have just buckets and buckets of sexual assault and all these horrible atrocities against women and people, because that's historically accurate. And first of all, history degree, so no. Second, we didn't have freaking dragons. If you're a fantasy author, I challenge you, be more creative. Come on, you're making up a whole world. You can't leave rape out of it? So in my world, the gods don't agree on anything except one thing. Sexual assault, you will be incinerated. That's the one thing they're like, ooh, we can all agree on that. Lightning bolt.
I once heard an interview with Stephen King saying that he thanked the authors of Goosebumps books because they created the people who would be reading him in 30 years. So you said you loved books as a child. I was just curious what books you loved.
So I said my parents provided us with books. They also made one other critical mistake, which is they did not shelve them correctly. So I had 2001 Space Odyssey and Mickey Mouse, right there. So that's one thing my parents did really well, is they did not restrict what we could read. And we didn't have young adult in the 70s. So there was a level of, books are books, children, and then everything else. And I think that's kind of helpful because people do, if you do read a lot, you tend to read up. Kids do read up. So for me, I consumed everything I could. The book that probably messed me up the most, that was given to me way too young, was Margaret Atwood's Cat's Eye. Which, if you love The Handmaid's Tale, I've read everything by Margaret Atwood, except her last, because I have this rule that I need to have a Margaret Atwood unread in case I have a really bad day. Terry Pratchett is probably one of my all-time favorites, which is why your costume as Granny Weatherwax the first time we met was so delightful. But Ursula Le Guin, A Wizard of Earthsea, she does so much in that book is 53,000 words. Read that book. If you want to write fantasy, look at how much she does in 53,000 words. That would never publish today. It would be called a novella. It would be published as a novella. But it's amazing what she accomplishes with that, and the magic system and the world and the feelings that she evokes. But Cat's Eye. Cat's Eye is the book. My friend, one of my first friends in Dallas, Ron Holder, recommended Cat's Eye to me and broke me at 17 reading it. Because it's about this artist. It's all this magical realism infused. It was my first experience to anything out of Canada. Just an amazing book.
So I was initially surprised by the use of the word witch in the Adam Binder books. But on the other hand, my mother's side of the family comes from Kentucky, the hills of Kentucky. And so we've had generations of these stories about the magic that was done and the tradition. And to me, what you're describing sounds like the Kentucky magic that my mother and the rest of them would talk about. And I was wondering if there was a connection there and if that was why the choice of the word witch.
Witch works best from a fiction standpoint, and that's what me and my friends in high school would have called ourselves. So as we were running around trying to find a way to fit together outside of society. I was called a beatnik once. That was a very weird moment. But there's a couple of things, there's a couple of linguistic games that I'm playing with you. I'm the term white trash and then warlock. White trash, I address, what white trash can be defined as, and is that poor white people, or is that a class or a mindset? What's going on? And the theme of classism is really important in my work, as is the theme of environmentalism. And then warlock. So most people think warlock means male witch. We can thank the TV show Bewitched for that. Which, for its time, was a little bit subversive. It had some stuff going on. If you go back and look at it askew, you're like, whoa, they were trying to say something there. Warlock is actually an ancient word that means traitor or oath breaker. And it was ascribed to people who were of that faith who betrayed. Warlock is not a good word in that community. And of course now, thanks to Dungeons and Dragons, it has a whole other meaning that people associate with it. Like, I expected it to be like that. I'm like, no, let's break the word down. But witch kind of fits, some of its origins indicate to bend. And Adam's sight, he has an ability to slightly bend, and he is bent in that terms of queerness. And so there's again, I'm playing linguistic games. Almost every single name in Dark Moon Shallow Sea has a second or third meaning. I like to play little games with you, especially in the names of characters and things.
Hello, I'm Dr. Taylor Ogeron, faculty member, also in language and literature. I want to ask you a question that I ask to students as well as a way to, well, for them, sometimes it kind of breaks their brain, but
It's already pretty well cracked. You're fine.
yeah, but get them at least to think about what they're getting out of writing and what they want their readers to get out of writing, and that is, the question is, how much do you care about readers getting your intention?
That is an excellent question.
Thank you. I do this professionally.
In this essay, I will, she's like, I need 3,000 words by Monday. All right, that's a good question. How much do I care about the intention? I think quite a bit. Probably, I'm a commercial fiction writer. I write for money. You know, this is my job. I have a mortgage and a cat to feed. But I think that ultimately, if you talk to most writers, most storytellers, we are trying to connect. Writing has the weirdest dichotomy to it because you spend all of your time alone, playing with your imaginary friends. And then you have to go out in public and do this and actually like talk to people and not, you know, scratch your belly button in public. But I think that we do that because storytelling is one of the oldest and most critical components of human connection. To Philip's point in question, folklore, myth, Homer, oral tradition, even Faulkner, right? Like one person would buy the book and read it to the whole town. Like people would gather because they could afford one book and maybe 3 people could read. Again, see literacy rates in America. We gotta work on that, guys. But I think that we tell stories and we write to connect ultimately because while it is very lonely work, it does take a village. It is about connecting to people. And my most satisfying piece of it comes when I get an email from someone who said, I connected. When somebody like Connor finds my book at random and emails me and says, I connected, or I get this character, I see myself in that. If I can make you cry and laugh, I've done my job, and that tells me that we've connected, or you've connected. So, quite a bit, I think.
So no spoilers, but I do have a question about Deadbeat Druid. So in Deadbeat Druid, you do visit Weatherford, essentially.
I do.
You go to Dead Woman's Crossing. So did you drive to Weatherford to research that, or?
I wanted to, and COVID happened.
Well, yeah.
And I had a whole 2-week road trip planned along Route 66, or in the underworld version of it, Route 666, because I could not leave a cliche like that unused. We went to Shamrock last night, by the way, and I got to see the gas station. And then I was so excited that I drove off the curb and nearly crashed the car. Don't tell the police. But yeah, I spent enough, I grew up here. So I had to draw on memory. I had to use a little bit of Google Maps to go remember some things. And Dead Woman's Crossing being just an interesting, unsolved true crime story. And like, I gotta work that in, so. But yeah, no, I did not get to, unfortunately. I was editing Trailer Park Trickster, and I was in Oklahoma City, which was helpful because on the way out, we did get to go back to Guthrie and go to Beacon. But that was when my mom was passing. And then when I was writing Druid, I really wanted to come back and do but lockdown was full on effect by then.
Well, you should make sure and drive out there before you.
Oh, we're going tomorrow morning.
Good. I was going to say, before you leave.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank you for the workshops that you provided today. I don't know if those of y'all who don't know, David's been hanging out with us all day and provided 2 workshops for students and faculty, and I just want to thank you for contributing that to us. Is very informative. I kind of want to dovetail off of what Connor was saying, and I'm interested in the official mythologies that inform your work and inspire you, but also maybe the less official mythologies. Like, what inspires you about Oklahoma as a mythos, in addition to the official ones?
I love that. I love that question. So officially, for Dark Moon Shallow Sea, I use the Greek Titans. So that would be a representation of Phoebe, goddess of the moon, whose murder kicks off the whole plot and, sends her last worshiper on a payback attempted murder spree that he's bad at because he can't kill people because he's too nice. If Adam is my golden boy, Rafe is my angry young self. And he has a lot of religious trauma to work out, which he does by stabbing. That said, I wanted to use the Greek Titans because they're lesser known. We all know the Olympians, right? Percy Jackson. Like, there's so much fiction that deals with the Olympians. So I chose to work with the Titans because they're less anthropomorphic. I can never pronounce that. They're less like us. They're more animalistic. They're more elemental. And I thought that would be a really good angle. I'm trying to see if the microphone distance fixes the static. Now the unofficial stuff. Why Oklahoma? I grew up with a lot of folklore. I grew up with a lot of myth. The first chapter of White Trash Warlock is somebody talking to Adam about urban myths about the Denver airport, which are all, look them up. Also, people who are really into those things can be a bit creepy. I have encountered them. Like, yes, there are lizard people stealing children. Like, I think that would make the news. Just, 500 kids a year is a lot, dude. No, they're covering it up. Anyway, I was a very weird child. I think that's probably apparent. I'm a very weird adult. But I would wake up at night and I would wander the trailer. I couldn't sleep very often. It's my dad's fault. My dad at the time was a park ranger, and he would get home at 10 to 10:30. And I was a nerdy kid, so, shy, gay, and nerdy. I was doing great for Guthrie. Yes.
That's my official opinion.
I appease you, please. I appeal to you. I'll stop moving. I talk with my hands. I hurt people all the time. So he would wake me up between 10 and 10:30 to watch Doctor Who. Which also meant, because, Channel 13, I would also catch like 5 to 10 minutes of Benny Hill, which not okay for a 5-year-old. But it turned me into a little bit of an insomniac. So everyone else would go to bed and I would wake up and wander the trailer. And I have all these very strange things about that. Like one night there was a man staring in the window. We lived in the woods. You had to come out to find us. And I froze with terror. So we were making eye contact through the window. I'm like 6. He's like a full-on person. And I'm like, ah. And I couldn't scream. But luckily he went away. And eventually I was like, I must have dreamed it. And then we found the footprints outside the next day. And I have about 200 stories like this that all informed my own personal folklore. If you will indulge me, I'll tell you the Lady in White. How many of you know that Lake Liberty has a Lady in White? Does anybody know what a Lady in White is? Thank you. Okay, somebody does. So a Lady in White is a very common rural or urban myth. It's a woman who drowned on her wedding night. She's always hitchhiking in a wedding dress. She's soaking wet. The person who picks her up, she says, I've got to get home, I've got to get home. They drive her home. The home is a shack. It's dilapidated and ruined, and she's vanished and left a puddle in the car. As ghost stories go, it's not too malicious, right? Well, Lake Liberty had a Lady in White. And I grew up in the woods on it. And at school, kids would be like, the Lady in White, have you ever seen her? You live out by the lake. Have you ever seen the ghost? And you could see at night sometimes on those dirt roads the pickup truck headlights bouncing around because teenagers would steal their daddy's beer and come out and try to find her. And I was terrified of this. I would imagine her like this very gauzy Stevie Nicks sort of character, and she would pull me under the lake and drown me in the cold. And I would wet the bed, which parents not thrilled with that. Terrified of this my whole life. And then several years ago, I came home and went to see my grandpa before he passed. And he said, I remember, he's in his rocking chair, I remember your Aunt Karen. When your Uncle Johnny would go out trucking, she'd get lonely. She'd smoke her marijuana. She put on her wedding dress and wandered the woods. My Aunt Karen was a lady in white. She's like, she'd scare those teenagers. It's like, do you understand the trauma I have had to unpack around all this for 40 years? And it was my Aunt Karen. And she had a very hippy-dippy wedding dress because it was the 70s. And yeah, so it was just my Aunt Karen stoned and missing my uncle. True story. So yeah, all that Oklahoma folklore and the liminal stuff, it's in the scrub oak. I mean, we live in a, creepy place, y'all. When it rains, the ground sometimes looks like it's bleeding if the red clay's up, and there's crows and flying through the mist. I mean, it's an interesting place.
In your opinion, what is the most important part of world building?
Okay, so I'm going to give you advice from Coco Chanel, and that's going to seem really super weird, but I promise there's a point. When you're world building, go through and when you're editing, especially if you're over your word count as a debut. We talked a lot about word count earlier today. If you're going to traditionally publish word count, your debut has to be in the right word range, and almost all of us overwrite. I am somehow an underwriter. Don't ask me how that happened. They're like, we need 10,000 more. I have the opposite problem. Most writers overwrite, especially in fantasy, because we get lost in our world building.
Dr. O will tell you I'm an overwriter.
Yeah, it's all right. It's very common. So what you're going to do is you're going to go through your sentences and you're going to look at your descriptions carefully, mindfully. You're going to see, here's the Coco Chanel part. Coco Chanel once said, before you leave the house, take off the last thing you put on. What she meant was don't over-accessorize. Don't over-accessorize your sentences. I know you did not expect Coco Chanel to come up today. But what you're going to do is you're going to look at you're going to find, like if you have 3 details in that world building paragraph, I want you to cut the most boring one. He was wearing a flannel shirt. Everybody, what color was it? He was wearing a flannel shirt. Red. Almost universally, you will say red. You don't need to tell them it's red. You say flannel shirt, their brain does red. Unless you have a reason to say it's blue or green, the default. Don't tell the reader something they may already know. He sauntered into church, naked from the waist up, carrying a half-empty bottle of Jack Daniels, wearing leather boots, and a tramp stamp tattoo. Which of those is the most boring? You're not going to stop and explain the HVAC system. So look for things that, if the character is conscious of it, like if it's important, but if it's not something that's important to them, don't stop and explain, like, and this is what an HVAC system is, or like if it's hot and that's relevant, you might say.
Chekhov's gun.
Exactly, but not just that. But if it's not something the character would notice because it's too everyday to them, take it out. And read Wizard of Earthsea. I think, again, that's such a perfect example of very lean world building, and she does so much in 53,000 words to make that come alive.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good question, Chloe.
Hi. Oh, I'm Dr. Flashbine. I didn't introduce myself. Are there any writing guides that you especially like or would recommend?
Oh, really? This is a really good question. I'm actually about to start, I think, a writing book book club online. But there are probably the 2 that have helped me the most are James Scott Bell's book on editing, self-editing and revision. He really taught me how to do scenes. And if you can ever catch one of his workshops live, go to it. He's very good. He's a great public speaker. He also taught me the trick of put a cough drop in your water bottle so that your water has a little mint and that will keep your throat fresh while you're speaking all day. Those professors, you're welcome. The self-editing and revision, you can also just ping me on social media too, and because my brain will eventually kick out 5 more. And then the other one, the one that helped me the absolute most, I think, was The Emotional Craft of Fiction by Donald Moss, who's a rockstar agent. That one is where I finally learned that whole how to get my characters' emotions on the page. My little quirk of neurodivergence is that I don't have atypical emotional registers. So I had to stop and think. Like, I didn't know I had synesthesia until Adam had synesthesia. I'm like, oh, that's why my brain does that. Like, I experience things sometimes the wrong way or through color. But the Emotional Craft of Fiction was an incredibly useful workbook. And Donald Mouse also has a couple of other books, including a workbook. His workshops are stellar. They're something you can do for yourself. They are just a very Socratic process of how can you make this worse for your character, how can you up the stakes. So the biggest thing you can do, I think, is just constantly query yourself on, if this scene doesn't feel like it's got the right hit, how can I make it worse? And the third one, you don't need the book, but the method I find very helpful is called StoryGrid. It's about how to chart and plot a book. It's also really helpful if you've got a book that you finished, but you don't think it's not quite there, or it's overwritten and you want to find places to cut. I use a modified version of that for every book I write. You're very welcome. How many of you do have PhDs in this room? Well, I am an underachiever, okay.
Here's another question I love to ask writers. Where do you see yourself situated in the relationship between you and your characters?
There's probably a bit more. I thought I had more distance until that guy asked me that, like, got in my face, and then I was like, no, leave my boy alone. But he's me. So I don't feel that my character should ever be a direct correlation to you, but I do think if you can infuse them with real traits and emotions, that makes them come alive. Adam, obviously there's a lot of autobiographical stuff going on with him. Everything that happens at Guthrie happened to me or my siblings or someone. We weren't going to get into the hammer. Anyway, that said, so I think find the parts of yourself that fit. I think every character is kind of a matrix or a soup. Let's use gumbo. I'm going to take this thing out of my life, this thing from Barbara's life, a little bit of that, an anecdote I heard once. I call it the compost heap. This is one of the reasons I read and consume as much as I can of all kinds of literature and nonfiction, and I travel as much as I can. I feel like experiences. And you put all that in, and then you mix that in, and if you're lucky, you'll have a Frankensteinian moment where it will come alive. You're like, aha, and then he starts to, if they start to talk back, you've done your job. They're like, you're going to do this. No, I'm not. I'm like, damn it. But you know it's working. So I have a close relationship. The funniest thing that can happen is when someone is not who I thought they were. That happened with Seth. Seth was supposed to be a villain. He started out as a very, wahaha, I am evil, mustache twirling cliche villain, and then I fell in love with him. And when I did that, he started to show me more of who he was. And as I connected with him more, he became more of a co-POV. He's still an antagonist, but we learn about him. And that makes him come alive. So if you want good characters, I think you've got to find that point of where do you end and they begin. But that also gets into kill your darlings. Don't get so attached. Every once in a while, somebody's got to lose an eye,
I wanted to ask, and possibly this is the final question because of time, for people who are so interested in all of your amazing things that you have going on, who may want to follow up, where can they find you on social media?
That's very sweet to ask. I'm everywhere. The easiest thing to do is go to davidslayton.com. Don't forget the R. There are some Florida man types out there. Wish I'd known that. Might have gotten a pen name. But I wanted to be David Ray. I wanted to be myself, so I chose, which, again, I'm home, so before this week is out, someone will be like, David Ray? And I'll be like, oh, God, I am back. So davidslayton.com. I am everywhere. I'm on TikTok, but I can't dance, so I know, another stereotype shattered. And also, I suck at that. So, but Instagram's probably the best these days, Blue Sky. I'm minimal on X because Nazis. And I'm just Google me. I'll pop up everywhere.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Hello. Hi, everybody. So thank you again for that. Can we get one more round of applause for our wonderful author? Thank you. So dovetailing off of a lot of the wonderful guidance that you offered us this evening, I want to encourage any emerging writers in the room, I'm looking at you, Chloe, that if you are interested in writing, please do use this as inspiration to continue to pursue that and to get your words out on the page. And if you are interested in seeking publication, Westview is a great opportunity for emerging writers. We are very supportive of new voices. We've published lots of students alongside well-established authors. So if you are interested in either receiving issues of Westview or submitting your work to Westview, I have cards I can give you, and I'm happy to help you along that path. So can we do this? A quick little. Oh yes. Oh. Thank you so much. Connor, did you want to say anything? No? You good? Philip? Hey. All right, y'all, thank you so much for coming out. What a wonderful event. How lucky are we to have David R. Slayton with us tonight and Westview continuing on and the published word continuing on. Thank you so much for coming this evening. One more round of applause, and we'll leave.